It is considered the most romantic scene in the history of Indian cinema, a feather floating between two pairs of lips. So delicate, so intimate, so electric with feeling, that audiences across India wept when they saw it on screen. What those audiences didn't know, what almost nobody knew, was the truth behind that scene. The two people in it were not speaking to each other, not a single word, not a greeting, not even eye contact between takes. Her name was Madhubhala, and her entire life was like that feather scene, breathtaking on the outside, quietly heartbreaking underneath. Chapter 1, February 14th, 1933. Of all the days in the calendar, she was born on Valentine's Day. As if fate, even at the very beginning, could not resist a sense of irony. Her real name was Mumtaz Jahan Begum Dehlavi. The fifth of 11 children born to Ataullah Khan, a Pashtun Muslim from Peshawar, and his wife Aisha Begum. They were not wealthy. They had nothing except a large family, a small home in Delhi, and a father who would spend his daughter's entire life both creating her career and destroying her happiness. But before any of that, grief arrived first. 5 of those 11 children died in infancy. The family that survived was bound together by loss, held tightly by a father who swore he would never lose another child, and a little girl who had already learned, before she could fully understand it, that the people you love disappear. She loved films with a child's complete unguarded love. She would come home and reenact entire scenes, every dance, every line. Her mother adored it. Her father was ashamed. He thought it was inappropriate for a girl from their family. He tried to stop it. Then he lost his job, fired from the Imperial Tobacco Company for being rude to a senior colleague. And suddenly, his daughter's dreams of stardom did not seem shameful at all. Chapter 2. In 1941, the family relocated to Bombay. They spent nearly everything they had on that move. What waited for them on the other end was a cowshed, not a metaphor, a literal cowshed on the outskirts of the city. That was what they could afford. The family that would produce one of the most glamorous women in Indian cinema history arrived in the city of dreams and slept in a building designed for animals. She said nothing. She rehearsed. At 9 years old, she made her film debut in Basan Harafovubi as baby Mumtaz. That film became the highest-grossing Indian film of 1942. She was 9 years old and already the family's primary earner. That responsibility never left her. Then came April 14th, 1944, the Victoria Dock explosion, one of the worst disasters in Bombay's history. The family's home was completely destroyed, but they survived. Because they had gone to watch a film at a local theater that evening. Cinema had saved their lives. And cinema, for the rest of Madhubhala's life, would take as much as it gave. Chapter 3. In 1947, at 14 years old, she was cast as the lead in Neel Kamal, opposite Raj Kapoor. On set, Devika Rani, one of the founding figures of Indian cinema, watched her perform and told the family to give her a new name. She suggested Madhubhala, meaning honey girl, something soft, luminous, unforgettable. She never went to school, not a single day. Her father did not allow it. She taught herself English later in her career from journalists and directors, reaching fluency through sheer self-discipline. One of Indian cinema's greatest stars grew up without ever sitting at a school desk, and carried herself with more grace and intelligence than most people who did. Chapter 4. Here is something most people miss when they talk about Madhubhala. They talk about the face, the smile, the beauty. They rarely talk about the work. Across roughly 70 films spanning 2 decades, she moved between genres that most actresses of her era refused to touch. Slapstick comedy, supernatural thriller, historical epic, psychological drama, romantic musical. She did all of them. And she did all of them differently. Critics who knew her craft described something specific about how she acted, something that had no easy name. She reacted, in real time, to whoever was standing across from her. She listened with her entire face, every shift in her co-star's energy visible in her response, before she spoke a single word. Her comedic instinct was perhaps the most underappreciated aspect of her work. Comedy requires a specific kind of courage, a willingness to be vulnerable, to be foolish, to risk looking ridiculous. Madhubhala understood this completely. In Mr. and Mrs. 55, she matched Guru Dutt, beat for beat, in scenes that required split-second timing and total physical commitment. Director K. Asif, the perfectionist behind Mughal-e-Azam, scrapped an entire earlier version of the film featuring a different cast after he watched Madhubhala. He rebuilt the film around her. He gave her almost no long dialogues in the final film, because he understood that her face communicated more in silence than most actors could say in a speech. She used stillness the way other actors used movement. In the prison sequences of Mughal-e-Azam, K. Asif insisted on absolute realism. Instead of using lightweight prop chains, Madhubhala was forced to wear real heavy iron. She was already profoundly ill with a failing heart, yet she endured hours under blazing studio lights with heavy metal cutting into her skin. And yet, those scenes became some of the most emotionally devastating moments in cinema history. Even Dilip Kumar, who had every personal reason to be ungenerous, once said of her, "Madhubhala acted in more films than she should have." It sounds like a criticism. It was not. It was the observation of someone who knew exactly how much she was carrying every time she walked onto a set, and kept going anyway. She loved this work, not the fame, not the money. Though she needed it desperately for her family, the work itself, the moment of becoming someone else, the particular freedom of being, for a few hours each day, exactly who the scene required her to be. It was the only place in her life where she answered to no one. Chapter 5. People have always struggled to describe what Madhubhala actually looked like in person, because photographs, they said, did not fully capture it. Shami Kapoor, who would go on to become one of Bollywood's biggest stars, was a young actor when he first saw her on set. He later described it this way: "It was as if I had been struck by lightning." He forgot his lines repeatedly, got nervous in her presence, could not look away. Madhubhala noticed. She pulled him aside, gave him a sisterly smile, and said, "Are Shami, you're too thin. How will you look like a hero opposite me? Go, drink some beer and put on some weight." He did. He actually started drinking beer specifically to impress her. He bulked up. She remained, as always, perfectly composed. In 1951, American photographer James Burke photographed her for Life magazine and described her in print as the biggest star in the international film industry. The following year, Theater Arts magazine ran a full-page feature with the headline, "The Biggest Star in the World, and She's Not in Beverly Hills." And then there is this extraordinary detail, one that even her dedicated fans rarely know. In Greece in the 1950s, a popular folk song called Madhubhala spread through the country, directly inspired by Madhubhala's image, which had leaked through cinema across borders into Greek popular culture. A woman from Delhi, whose films were in Hindi, became a folk figure in Greece before the internet existed. She was called the Venus of Indian cinema, the Marilyn Monroe of Bollywood, a living Taj Mahal, beautiful, eternal, and built around a love that never fully arrived. Chapter 6. To understand Madhubhala's life, you have to understand Atullah Khan. He was not a villain in the simple sense. He was something more complicated and more damaging. A man who loved his daughter completely, controlled her absolutely, and destroyed several of the things she wanted most, while genuinely believing he was protecting her. From the moment her career began, he managed every aspect of it. He negotiated every contract. He approved every film. He controlled every rupee she earned, and she earned a great deal of it. By the 1950s, Madhubhala was one of the highest paid stars in Bollywood. That money flowed through her father's hands first. She was not just an actress. She was the sole financial support for her entire family, her parents, her surviving sisters. All of them depended on what she earned. Her father knew this, and he used it. When B.R. Chopra wanted Madhubhala for Naya Daur in 1957, a film she was already shooting with Dilip Kumar. Her father discovered there would be outdoor shoots away from Bombay. He stormed onto the set. He stopped the production. He pulled his daughter out of the film. His stated reason, he did not want his daughter spending nights on outdoor locations with male co-stars. When Frank Capra, 3-time Academy Award winner, personally sought Madhubhala for a Hollywood film, journalist B.K. Karanjaya called Adaullah Khan with the offer. His response, 5 words delivered without hesitation: she cannot eat with fork and knife. She never knew the full story of that phone call. The door to Hollywood was closed by her father before she could even reach it. When Madhubhala fell in love with Dilip Kumar, genuinely, deeply, by every account that exists, her father allowed the relationship to continue for as long as it served him. Dilip Kumar was box office gold. The two of them together were the most bankable pairing in Bollywood. But when the Naya Dor crisis forced a choice, it triggered a public collapse that would sever their bond forever. At Chapter 7. She had been carrying it her whole life without knowing, a ventricular septal defect, a hole in the heart, and congenital, meaning she was born with it, undetected through her entire childhood and her early career. On a film set in 1954, she vomited blood. When she looked down, she understood something was very wrong. Doctors in London examined her. Their verdict: 2 years perhaps. She told almost no one and went back to work. She survived 15 more years after that diagnosis. 15 years of films, of heartbreak, of 9 years eventually confined to a bed, carrying a hole in her heart that no one watching her on screen could possibly have guessed was there. Chapter 8. Before the diagnosis, before Hollywood, before all of it, there was Dilip Kumar. They met on the set of Tirana in 1951. 9 years of love followed, real, documented, described by both of them in terms that make clear it was not performance. Madhubhala, it was said, would start blushing at the mere mention of his name. Then came the infamous courtroom lawsuit. The drama peaked when Dilip Kumar took the witness stand. In full view of the public, the press, and her furious father, Dilip Kumar looked directly at Madhubhala and declared, "I love this woman and shall love her till my dying day." But right after this grand declaration, he testified against her father, effectively destroying any chance of their union. In the aftermath of the court case, Dilip Kumar came to find Madhubhala privately. He told her he had a qazi, a Muslim priest, waiting. He was ready to marry her that very day, on one condition. She had to leave her father behind, walk away from him, choose Dilip Kumar or choose her family. She could not do it. Not because she did not love Dilip Kumar, but because her family depended entirely on her income, which her father controlled. Leaving her father meant leaving them all to ruin. The man who loved her most asked her to choose between 2 kinds of love, and she could not. They made Mughal-e-Azam together after all of this, in complete silence, not a word exchanged between takes. And then they filmed the feather scene. Dilip Kumar later wrote, "The classic scene with the feather, which set a million imaginations on fire, was shot when we had completely stopped even greeting each other. The most romantic scene in Indian cinema, shot by 2 people who had already lost each other." Chapter 9. And now, the facts that don't make it into the standard telling. Madhubhala had a particular way of expressing interest in someone she found attractive. She would hand them a single red rose and a handwritten note that read simply, "Accept it if you love me." With her beauty and charm, the accounts suggest not many said no. In 2018, 49 years after her death, the New York Times published a belated obituary for Madhubhala. They had not written one when she actually died. They corrected that omission half a century later, recognizing her global impact long after the curtains fell. Her devoted fans to this day call her a living Taj Mahal because, as they put it, the Taj Mahal is not only an eternal symbol of beauty, but a tomb built around a love that ended in tragedy. And then there is this final heartbreaking detail. She was buried with her personal diary, whatever she had written in it. The full private record of what it was truly like to be Madhubhala is gone with her. Nobody knows what it said. Her tomb was later demolished by a Wahhabi Muslim sect that does not permit the building of ornate graves. The physical place where she rested no longer exists in its original form. She left behind only her films, and her face, and the things people who loved her remember saying about her. Chapter 10. In 1955, at the age of 22, Madhubhala became a film producer. She established Madhubhala Private Limited, her own production house. At a time when female producers in Bollywood were virtually non-existent, she produced films in which she also starred. She made creative choices. She built something of her own, and quietly, so quietly, it only became public by accident in 1954 when a journalist discovered it. She had been paying monthly bonuses out of her own pocket to the lower-level staff at every studio she worked in. Cleaners, technicians, the people nobody else thought about. When it became public, Filmfare's notoriously hard-to-please editor, Babu Rao Patel, called her publicly the Queen of Charity. After that, she began doing it more privately. She did not want the credit. She just wanted the people to get the money. Chapter 11. In 1960, she married the eccentric genius Kishore Kumar. Out of deep respect for her family, Kishore actually converted to Islam and changed his name to Kareem Abdul. It was a choice she made herself. Perhaps the first major personal choice in her life that her father did not dictate. But marriage did not bring companionship. It brought an echoing, tragic silence. After Mughal-e-Azam, her health collapsed entirely. She spent the last 9 years of her life confined to a single room. As Kishore Kumar's own career skyrocketed, he bought her a house to heal in, away from the world. But doctors warned him that stress or excitement would worsen her condition. Terrified and constantly working, he visited her only once every few months. She was left profoundly isolated. Yet people who did visit her during those lonely years said she was often the most alive person in the room. She still laughed easily. She still told jokes that made her visitors cry with laughter. Her mind remained entirely her own, sharp, curious, present, even as her body failed. On February 14th, 1969, Valentine's Day, she turned 36. 9 days later, on February 23rd, she died. She was buried with her diary, the one nobody has ever read, the one nobody ever will. Chapter 12, she made over 70 films. Only 15 were box office successes, a fact that surprises people who know only the mythology. She was given no major award during her lifetime, no Filmfare, no national recognition. She received one Filmfare nomination for Mughal-e-Azam and did not win. The American magazine was right. She was the biggest star in the world. And the world found 1,000 ways to make sure she never fully knew it. She was born on Valentine's Day. She gave everything she had to people who did not always deserve it. Her father, her audiences, the men she loved, the industry that used her beauty like a commodity and her illness like a tragedy it could profit from. She did all of it with a hole in her heart, not just the medical kind. Mumtaz Jahan Begum Delavi. Born February 14th, 1933, Valentine's Day. Died February 23rd, 1969, 9 days later, known as Madhubhala, the Venus of Indian cinema, undefeated by beauty, undone by everything else.